All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of Make Music Connect. This session, documenting SEL growth and needs in the music classroom using digital tools, will help kick our day off, and welcome. Before I introduce our presenter, I do have some housekeeping announcements. I have put some links in the chat for everybody. Let's see, the first is a downloadable link for the Whova app. If you haven't done that yet and want to watch any of the content on your phones, that would be the place to do it. There is a link to our publisher's choice list, and all of our publishers have put together some recommended repertoire lists, so it's a great resource for you, so check that out. The certificate of attendance link is there. It's also in the description on the session, as with all of the sessions, so if you don't want to scroll all the way up through the chat, you can always grab it there. There is a link to a Jamboard folder, which we'll be utilizing in this morning's session, as well as a participant doc that has all sorts of resources that we will be referencing as well. Just a reminder, this session is being recorded, as all of our sessions are. In about a week, those live sessions will be made available in addition to all of the on-demand sessions that are currently in the platform, and you'll have exclusive access to those through the end of July. And then just a quick note on Q&A. Any questions you can put through the Q&A section in Whova, and we are going to be answering those as we go through the session. So if we do run out of time, we do have about 45 minutes only. There is a community board for SEL growth, and so you can put your questions there, or we can continue dialogue once we get to the end of the session, if to continue that on. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our presenter for this morning, Anne Fennell. Anne Fennell is the K-12 Music Program Manager for San Diego Unified School District in San Diego, California, President of California Music Educators Association, and the immediate past chair for the National Association for Music Education's Innovation Council. She holds a bachelor in music education, a master's in educational leadership studies, and Orff Schulwerk levels 1, 2, and 3. Her experiences include 35 years in education, 32 of those teaching music composition and steel drum ensembles, grades 9 through 12. Kindergarten through grade 8 music through Orff Schulwerk, and leading vocal and instrumental ensembles in civic, professional, and national performances. Anne is a published author and presents nationally and internationally. She has received numerous awards, including the 2020 Technology in Music Education National Teacher of the Year, the 2017 MSA National Teacher of the Year, and Top 10 Grammy Music Educator in 2016. So please help me welcome Anne, and I'll hand it over to you to take it from here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Jen. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and thank you also to Make Music and all of the sponsors, the entire team, to make this happen. This is a behemoth lift, and it's just so much fun that we can connect across these phenomenal platforms. And thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm very excited about this session. Please know this is just a 45-minute dip into what is possible. I look forward to connecting with you further in other places. Just so you know that we'll go do an overview of social emotional learning, core competencies, and then spend really like the last half of the workshop, really look at how are we going to document all this work. I am driven by all of my beliefs in music education, and I have always believed in lifelong learning and music education for all students. And I believe in casting the educational net wide so that all students can find themselves in and through music. And I also believe and know that music is a creative and rigorous academic subject that improves the human condition through a shared experience, and it defines our humanity and our culture. And we find so much of this tied into our social emotional learning and understanding of who we are. Just so you know, I first started this process when I was leaning into personalized learning in the late 2008, 2009, and looking at how does personalized learning connect with our habits of mind. And in fact, habits of mind are the largest umbrella, which really is social emotional learning, and I'm going to make that connection with you. So I've been working with this in the K-8 window, and then my last 10 years of teaching at the high school window as well, supported this at all age levels. So without further ado, we're going to do some driving questions here. What is social emotional learning? This is an important definition so that we can grasp it. And there's many different definitions out there. I tend to lean with Castle's side, and Castle is a known resource for social emotional learning. And then what would intentional teaching of social emotional learning through music look like? In and through music, right? What would it really look like in our classrooms? It all sounds great from afar, but when you're in the midst of all of the craziness, what does it really look like? And then how do we gather evidence of this? And that is saying that we just can't say, oh, I teach social emotional learning. Well, what does that really mean? And what does that really look like? And then how do we ensure that this is really happening so that we can support students' growth just like we would document growth in any other subject matter? So here is the definition, and I want you to just take a second or so just to look at that before I even begin to read it for you. Take just a glance through it. We know that social emotional learning is really knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities. Right? And the most important part is not just looking at it, but it's like, how do you manage this? In the heat of it all, how do you manage it? For us as educators, as humans, and as for those students as they're learning and growing. It's a way to achieve personal and collective goals. It helps us acquire and apply and show empathy for others and establish and maintain supportive relationships. And it's making responsible and caring decisions. It always cracks me up when people would say, oh, these are the soft skills. Well, in reality, these are the hardest things we have to learn in our lives. It's really easy overall to memorize some word or some definition or practice a scale and it becomes physical in our body. But the reality is the day-to-day workings of humanness with other people are the most challenging things we have in our lives. And those are that consume me personally a little bit more mentally. We know that social emotional learning, that if it's really authentic, it is embedded throughout everything that we do. It is sustained, not just a one and done. It's Friday, social emotional learning day, and it's intentional. Like I think about this in advance, and then that gives me enough nimbleness for me to be able to come in and work and understand inside when I can actually flip if it needs to be taught in the moment as well. I think that's very important too. We also know that social emotional learning builds three large umbrellas, and that's identity, agency, and belonging. And these three umbrellas help humans find out who they are, give them voice to what they want to share and who they are, and then also belong into a community. And belonging is so important because without belonging, things just don't happen with students, right? They have to feel that they're belonging in this. Social emotional learning has 5 core competencies, and there are and you can read them right there on the document: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and decision-making. And inside each of those are many different words to define. So these are identity, agency, and belonging is a bigger umbrella. And then it goes down to 5 core competencies. And I found that with the 5 core competencies, it was really tough to find all the words and all of the categories of what fits in these. So I truly use personalized learning habits of mind. And if you go into the document that was just put in there, the participant document, you'll see that this is link number 1. All of my slides have a little link number or a number on there that tells you which link in the document is. That way you can actually read it, because I know with this document I may be breaking every single PowerPoint slide rule about font size. So if you look at these habits of mind, all of these really fit into our core competencies. I'm going to back up one slide. You can see those core competencies right there, those 5. These habits of mind help us break down the core competencies. Again, this is on the personalized learning side of the world, but the reality is it helps us pull it apart so it's palatable and gives us goal towards it. Otherwise, they're too big for the overarching competencies almost are too big for my mind to understand. I had these posters in my room everywhere, This was how I introduced classes to them at the first day of school. I would cut these little squares up or these rectangles up, and I'd give them to students, and I would have them go identify themselves with another person that they might not know and talk about what this means to them. Now, this is the secondary level, but I also did this secondary high school. I also did this at the middle school level. We would just break these words up and find people to talk about these. And at the elementary level, there's a way we can pare these down as well, and I'll show that later in the slide deck. But I think it's important that we look at all the different possible ways that we can begin to introduce these. So if you click on that document link that is in the chat, you will see all the possible habits of mind that exist in there. So that's the lens through which we're going to view today. And now you can see that I have these aligning the 5 core competencies to the habits of mind. And you're going to be able to look at these and go, oh, you know, if I'm persisting, that really helps me self-manage. And that also is part of self-awareness, right? I'm aware of what I'm moving through. When I am number 14, finding humor, that might build relationship skills. That might help me with the social awareness as well. That's really important to understand that these can fit in there. And I'm going to help you understand this even more because we're going to break these apart to what it really looks like in music. So we're going to jump into a Jamboard. We're going to spend about 5 minutes inside this Jamboard, maybe more, and then we'll see where we are time-wise once I see the Jamboard rolling along. I want to confirm that the Jamboards are broken up in groups by last name, just in case we have an overload. I'm not really sure. I believe, Jen, am I correct that we have 13 people in this community right now? Is that correct? Let's see if she's going to.
Sorry, I had to find my unmute.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Do we have 13 online right now?
I see 62.
Oh, lovely. I'm looking at the wrong number. Okay, so we're definitely going, thank you. We are going to definitely break up into the Jamboards by last name. Now, this is our goal. You might already be in there because you have that link in that document by your last name, but let me explain it from here also. We're going to look at creating, responding, and connecting, and performing, presenting, producing, the artistic processes that are found inside our music subject, right? And our goal is to provide examples of how to intentionally teach the habits of mind through the artistic process of music. So on a Jamboard, you're going to use a new sticky note for the example, and you're going to number the habit of mind with your idea. Now, I want you to look at how I just did this. This is just a screenshot of the Jamboard that you see right now in front of you. And you get to choose the Jamboard by your last name. So look at the last name. That'll allow more people to spread out. By the way, page 1 and page 2 of the Jamboard are exactly alike. So if you feel there's not enough real estate on the first Jamboard to create something, then you just flip to page 2. Feel free to do that. And if you've never worked with Jamboard, you can see on the left there's a little square note. If you click on that, that's a sticky note, and you can type in it and you can arrange it. So you can again use either page 1 or 2. And as you connect to the habit of mind to the process, think about how this might be documented later, because we're going to talk about that the other half of this presentation. So here's an example. I looked at item number 11, which is a habit of mind of creating, imagining, and innovating. And it authentically connects to creating music. So when students compose music, they are creating something from nothing. Students can compose for unique instrument combinations that are rarely heard to find a new timbre. So that gives you an idea how to connect a habit of mind, which is part of social emotional learning, to one of the artistic processes. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to actually go off camera and support Jamboards, and I'm going to find those Jamboards on my screen as well so that we can look at those, and I'm going to give us about 5 minutes to explore on the Jamboards and for you to learn from other people as well. I'm officially off camera. I'm escaping from this, and I'm going into the Jamboards link right now. And I'm going to pick Jamboard 1 right now. I'll give you some time. I'm going to mute myself so I'm not talking over your thinking. I do appreciate Google when they say Anonymous Quagga or Anonymous Woolly Mammoth has joined the group. Thank you for getting on those Jamboards. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm starting to see some Jamboard topics come up. I also added another one in there to give us some ideas. I think the challenge is to place ourselves in, let's pretend, connecting to music. When we connect to music, how do I listen to the music? So I'm thinking about item number 10. I gather data through all senses. I'm listening to it. I'm thinking about the composer. I'm reading. I'm hearing. I'm feeling it emotionally. So we think of the process of music, and then how do we connect a habit of mind to it? I see here that someone said responding to music. Number 4, there are multiple ways. Number 4 is thinking flexibly. There are multiple ways we could perform a passage in music to give it meaning. Yes. And we think flexibly to look at all those multiple ways, because ours might be different perceptions than others. Let me go to another one I see here. Number 11, creating, imagining, and innovating under connecting. I believe it is absolutely imperative to find humor in all facets of our field of endeavor. This is so true. I cannot even, this is one of my challenges too, is to find humor. I believe always add to the emotional bank between teacher and students. And shared humor experiences. I think that's really important because that helps build community and helps connect everyone. Absolutely true. I'm going to go to another Jamboard. I see this one. I'm going to enlarge a little bit. Providing students an opportunity to experience wonderment and awe. Oh my gosh, yes. With learning and listening to new music from different styles and cultures. Yes, because they can find that new concept, that new understanding of sound. And number 16, remaining open to continuous learning. That's my everyday job, actually. I love that. Music provides students a way to continuously learn and explore. So let's just take a second here. This is really important because this is not easy work, right? This is, oh my gosh, habits of mind, and then how do I connect it to this music part? It's thinking about music as a different inroad to who we are as a person. Let's look at this one. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. Speaking with musical vocabulary in terms to identify a problem or provide a solution with clarity. Oh, wow, that's fantastic. So we're thinking with community with clarity and precision. We're thinking and communicating, speaking of which, with clarity and precision. That's so important because that's that point of, I can even think of it as, are you sharp or are you flat? And then what do I need to do to change that? And providing clarity in wording. Beautiful. All of this is a part of social emotional learning. Really, this is that, if I think of number 9 as like thinking with clarity and communicating with clarity, it's that real self-awareness part, right? I'm going to go back to the slide link. Feel free to hop back into those Jamboards at any time if an idea comes to you as we start to process this work. This is really important. This is not easy work, right? This is us pulling apart everything we do, not from the music side, but from the habits of mind or social emotional learning side. So I am going to go back into this. I'm now sharing my slideshow. You can see there, is this where we're coming from? Now I just want you in the chat, if you can dive into the chat, share your thoughts or an awareness you had as you aligned a habit of mind or social emotional learning to an artistic process. Was there a thought that came over you? Was that a thought of like, heck, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was, or, oh my gosh, it's already embedded. What might that be inside our chat? If you have a chance to throw a question in the chat or a thought in the chat. Maybe this is you even thinking about, oh, here we come. Oh my gosh, it is already embedded. So true. Peggy, thank you. Yes, Rose, we do this all the time in music. We do. And when we intentionally call it out, that is when we're really looking at social emotional learning. It's intentional, it's embedded, and it's sustained. So we then make room for it in our curriculum intentionally. And then again, nimble enough to call on it when it happens in the moment, and that has to be taught in that moment, because really contextual learning is how quality learning happens. Thank you to Peggy and Rose for submitting those thoughts into the chat. Keep all of these ideas in your brain as we work through this work. So, and here comes, oh yes, embedded, but not always obvious. Oh, I have to go back to Bethany's comment. Yes, embedded, but not always obvious, named and identified for our students. Yes, and that is where we get to as educational learners and supporters and activators of our students. We get to call it out and say, oh my gosh, let me talk to you about this that I'm just going through right now. And we get to actually model this, and we get to identify and model this to all students. Yes. George says, what types of beginning of the year routines do you intentionally establish that pave the way for health as social emotionally learning classrooms? I am absolutely vulnerable with my students. I am the first to model errors. I'm the first to say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Oh my gosh, I just said this and that was not necessarily kind. I need to reframe that. I model as a role model of social emotional learning and vulnerability to my students, and I don't care what age. And at the high school, the moment you start doing that, students feel you're authentic because it's real. It is about our sustained growth over time as human beings, right? And so how do I model this? I set this up for success. We even do baselines. I'll show you what the baseline chart looks like when we start to document. And we have habits of mind goals every single day as a classroom. And we had habits of mind goals individually for every single student. And so this is, again, how we do our meet and greets the very first day. When the kids are walking in my room, I would hand them some of the habits of minds and have them go find someone that they don't know and talk about what this might mean to them. That's their first in. It's a part. Social emotional learning, all of these habits of mind are posted around my room. There are posters. Again, there are daily agendas that we create that are part of that as well. So that'll help. And I will continue to thank you for putting that question in the chat, George, and I'll continue to come back to this. So how is music authentically connected to our emotions in preparing, creating, and performing it? That's a huge important question for us. Look, I'm going to tell you maybe 90% of what I went through in college, because I was doing music education and a performance degree at the same time. I think half of what I went through that held me back was right here. It wasn't the skill on my instrument, my flute. It was here. And if someone had helped me address those thoughts and those ideas, I think I would have been a better musician. I would have been more in tune. I would have been self-aware. I was so hyper internally aware, but I didn't know how to manage anything. I didn't know how to manage all of the thoughts that were going through me, and what a disservice that was overall to my outcome. And I think it took me 35 years to figure it all out. I'm still struggling with it, right? There are parts, that's our continual life learning for sure. Music and emotion is connected. And then when it's separated, then we've done a disservice to music. And we know that every single human being in our classrooms has emotions connected to music and creating it and performing it. And we can support everyone as a learner in this process. I think that's the key. That's the most important thing that we can do, because we are so lucky that music is that emotive aspect, and we get to tap into that at first. That's beautiful. I've always leaned into the whole musician, and what is that? And I don't care at what age level. How do you connect music? How do you create music, perform, produce, present, and respond? That's the whole musician. My old school pie was, how do you practice it and how do you perform it? And then survival of the fittest to get through those things. And I didn't even really have anyone to talk to about those thoughts and feelings to make something even larger or more embedded with me. Sometimes I talked to my private teacher, but not too often, because I could tell there was an edge that had to be kept to be a certain level. So I was really cautious, but going at it with this whole musician view, I really feel like we can never be leaving the human behind in education. I don't care what level, or then we've done a disservice to the music and a disservice to human learning and growth. So here comes some thoughts now that we're going to get into documenting social emotional learning. This is really important. This is the meat of what this title of the session is about. How do we ensure a student's thinking is visible and understood? And by the way, quality assessment is, how do we make students' thinking visible? Think of the child who draws a picture at a very young age, and you go, so tell me about this picture. It's the same thing in music. So tell me what you're thinking about this. Tell me why your plan is this. Tell me more about this. Help me understand this. I see a topic has come up in the chat. I'm going to address it right now from Lawrence. I spent 25 years teaching middle school band and have moved over to K-5 general music. The way that students respond, the vocabulary they bring, the ability to self-reflect, performance skills are wildly different in many ways. So true. Common to both settings, though, is the need for the teacher to be open. Thank you, Lawrence. We are the conduit to make this happen. How can you teach the language of emotions while shutting off the emotional part of self? And we can't, right? It's got to be just front and center to everything we do. And we know that students who are emotionally engaged do better in school. Research proves it. If you go to the castle.org website, you'll see so much research. We know, oh my gosh, years ago in second language learning, acquisition classes that I took, it was about if you shove down that affective filter, the affective filter, kids don't learn, right? They shut you out and shut you down. So we cannot shut off the emotional part of self. Thank you for stating that, Lawrence. Beautiful. So how do we help our students see their strengths and needs, right? Because everyone has strengths and everyone has needs. I am 58 years old and I have strengths and I have needs, and I'm continuing to learn how to manage who I am in context to everything that I do. And how do we document learning to support these authentic connections? This is important. So when we look at emotional intelligence, it's not a one and done ever. We know that there's kind of a continuum of learning. It's really, how do you perceive an emotional understanding or a habit of mind? How do you use it and understand it? Those kind of cross over on two different levels. Sometimes you understand it first, sometimes you use it first. Sometimes you use it first and then you eventually understand it in context. And then how do you manage emotions? The whole deal is to help students understand how to manage emotions. And we're so lucky in schools because we get the real contextual lifelong learning of how to do this in music. It is through this sound we help manage ourselves through these personal goals of becoming better musicians, through context of learning and performing as an ensemble in a classroom setting. In other subject matter, you get to learn by yourself, but in music, we learn as group learning with the self-connected. So how do we document all of this? Just so you know, I'm going to reiterate this. I've said this before. We are all in a continuum of growth, and humans are growing throughout life. So a student may come to you, and one day you feel like, wow, this child is really learning how to persist. But then suddenly, something's happened in their life that shift that, and they fall a little bit off, and we have to help guide them back. Or you might find that yourself, you're able to persist in one subject matter, but maybe not persist in another subject matter. And so it's kind of fluid. Our goal is to help manage these over time. This is really emotional learning and this EQ, right? This intelligence quotient, the emotional quotient of how do we learn how to manage our emotions? That's really learning. And it changes. And ideally, we want it to see it grow over time. But we want to also be able to gather evidence towards that growth. That's important, gathering evidence towards that growth. So this is one, earlier in the question, George, you had mentioned like, what is a routine? If you want to look at this in, once students start to understand these, and we pull these apart, well, there's posters all over the room, right? But I help define these with students, they're in groups. We can talk about this as a class first, and we actually do I did class rankings. I would give this out to everyone and say, okay, what's the most important habit of mine as an individual that we need? And there were classes that would run in threads. Like sometimes there was a class that always say, where was the one? It was managing impulsivity. That would come out as a high one normally at the high school level and the middle school level. But then there was a class of students I would take this baseline with, rank your habits of mind, like where do you feel the most important need is for you and then maybe as a class. And someone would say, finding humor. The class would kind of come in as groups of similar habits of mind. It was really interesting. But then I would take all this data and collate, and I would go, oh my gosh, this class overall, they feel that they would like to learn how to gather data through all senses. And then I would keep these class rankings for every single classroom, and these became documented in our class. And we would look at the tasks hand for the daily agenda, and we would look at habits of mind, and I would say, what's our habit of mind goal for today? And then we would really look at it and address it. And then what's that going to look like, right? What is it going to look like and sound like? If I'm going to say that we're going to gather data through all senses today, what does that look like? That looks like me stopping in class and going, do you hear that? Do you feel that? What did you guys feel? How did that feel to all of you? What does that feel as when we hear that sound? If it was taking responsible risks was the habit of mind for the day with the whole class, I would say, okay, I'm taking a risk today, I'm going to try this on this instrument, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. I would model it. I would model my thinking. I was doing the metacognitive part with them all the time, thinking about my thinking and then sharing it out loud to every single student. Let me go the right direction in this now. So use these documents. Then this is all in your folders. Every single document here that I'm showing is in your folders. And if you don't like any of these, you can email me and I will redesign these on Canva for you to fit your classroom because I already have the models on Canva. So students take notes. You can adjust these to the level of your students. You can have this by individual or by class. You can do class goals. You can take the top 5 and push forward on that. I would also give these out to students. Now, these are all fillable PDFs on your end when you download them. Please know that. But just so you see with these screenshots, I've got these screenshots for you. The document on the left, that's one page with all the habits of mind. I actually, in my ensemble class, I printed this out for every single student. And I said, when you find evidence of this, that you're practicing this, can you document this? And they would just write little notes. And they would just keep this. And then I'd walk around the room and I would find the students like, oh, I see you need help with number 7, questioning and problem solving. How can I help you with that? or they would find students who had similar needs or growth areas or similar strengths, and they would support each other as a team to grow. And what I would love is in the middle of class, I would go, hey, I know I need help with gathering data through all senses. Excuse me. And someone would chime in and go, let me help you with that today. That's what this was about. I cannot tell you what it did for my performance ensembles. We became so collaborative because we were humanly collaborative. It changed the classroom climate. It made it us all in to be together. It was such an important part of what we did. Now on the right, you'll see habits of mind, gathering of evidence. This is like an 8-page document with 2 habits of mind per page, and you could write. And this I used with upper elementary as well. I know it was 8 pages of paper, but I'm telling you, they used them. And it was really cool. We also had them in posters, and then people wrote sticky notes on them. That helped as well. So these are just, again, fillable PDFs if you want them online, or printable so that you can just take them out and have them to people document. Sometimes we don't have time to get online in the middle of an ensemble class. It's harder. Okay, these are my favorite parts because this is in the elementary side. They pick a habit of mind. They can write a number. If you define it as a childlike term, they can have it there. I'll show you in a slide deck how to do that coming up here soon. And then they shade in on that first, I am growing in my habit of mind. They grow in. Are they just planted in this? Are they beginning to really use it? And then on what day of the week was this? And what are you going to do? They set personal goals like I would have my high school and middle school kids do every day. And by the way, that goal setting, at first it took a couple minutes, and then it was a no-brainer 5-second goal setting. They knew what they were aiming for, and I could help them keep on track. And then they'd come back here, look at the second day they could do it. And then how am I growing today in my habit of mind? Sometimes you see progression, sometimes you don't. And then what does that look like? How are you going to grow? This is for, on the left-hand side, this is an individual. On the right-hand side, this is the class, because this is how we work as a class. And I think we all contribute to that class goal. And you can see this at the high school, secondary level as well, middle school and high school, same thing. But I changed, it's no longer a seed to a plant. It's, do you identify and see the habit of mind? Are you using it? Are you understanding it? Are you managing it? Are you managing it? That's the most important thing. When we self-manage, we are learning and growing. Managing is the ultimate goal. So those are all sitting in that document as well. And now we're not going back to the Jamboard, but I want you to think about your documented ideas that you created. How these could be addressed on any of the shared documents. So I'm going to escape from this presentation for a second, and I'm going to go into one of these here. And this was speaking with musical vocabulary terms to identify a problem or provide a solution. I'm going to use that as an example here into the slide deck right here. How am I going to think about the vocabulary I use to solve a problem in the ensemble? And maybe that ensemble need becomes part of this document growth here. So how do you contribute to that? How do you start to document that need? You're helping them connect things that seemed in isolation, the self from the class, to suddenly there is no isolation. It is all of us contributing together to become better. So this type of documentation that'll help us grow. Once the students are familiar with this, it's like the alphabet to them. They just are running around. And you know what I love? I love it in the middle of a class when they would say something like, I'm having persisting right now because I'm not able to think flexibly. And when you start to hear students' vocabulary, it would move me to tears because like, okay, I'm doing it. This is right. It's working. And we know it's contributing to the growth. Another digital resource, this is going to be a forced copy for you. I made this on, for those of you who use Google Docs, and if not, you can print it out however you want to do it. But it's a digital portfolio that can include your habits of mind. And I put 2 habits of mind actually per tab, and I'm actually going to go to it right now in this document right here. I'm going to the links, and I'm going to go to the digital notebook. It's going to show you to force a copy, You make a copy, and then it's going to load. And once you do that, when you click on this, you can see that it has websites for you to peruse. I posted the Habits of Mind in there, and you can see how the chapter covers are there, and then they can document inside each page of the digital notebook. So this becomes a really great resource. I've used digital notebooks when I even attend conferences because it helps keep my brain organized. So if that is part of your brain and you like that, that is there for you to use as well. I'm going to go back into the slideshow now. This is just another digital means for actually documenting social emotional learning and their growth. Again, it's not about a final arrived check. It is about growth over time and how they see every action and thought moving toward their social emotional connection to your music classes. So these are really important that we figure out how to address this. Okay, so I use sticky notes a lot in my classroom. You can see what that looks like. And this is from responding and connecting to composers to social emotional learning. And then that becomes evidence for them. I also, when the students work in Google, I actually have them use HOM, Habits of Mind, Thinking Flexibly, and they get to choose their habit of mind. So Kiana used Thinking Flexibly. Noah used Strive for Accuracy. And every day they posted this. It took them like 2 minutes to walk out before they ended the class. Sometimes they do it on their phone as they're walking out. Sometimes where if this is a composition class, they would do it on their laptops. I love Ursi's statement. I'm going to use thinking interdependently today. Today I will get help from those around me as well as give help and take advantage of the fact that I work in a classroom and not an office. That cracked me up. Just so you know, social emotional learning leads to emotional intelligence, and that learns to independent learning. If we don't have independent learners, they're going to rely on us, and it becomes a product towards an ends, not a process towards lifelong learning. Social emotional integration can happen by you setting classroom goals and individual goals, you connect in context, you co-create rubrics, you set classroom goals, you help them rank, as I said, you identify needs. With every music process, you identify an actual habit of mind goal, and you invite them to create targets for them. Again, you connect them to self-reflect. That's very important. And you use the habit of mind goal in everyday language. This is really important for everyday language. And you teach it in the moment. We have to stop, take 30 seconds to teach it in the moment. And that we invite students to describe the habit of mind during various authentic connections and aspects. And then you intentionally write lessons towards it. That might mean that when you're doing XYZ, because we have patterns in our lives and teaching, that this habit of mind is going to come up. You bring it up. Just so you know, if you click on number 7 link, you're going to see 3 slide decks that I created where students could actually, you make a forced copy of all those slide decks, and then they can actually take the slide deck and then they can document each habit of mind. I've done 2 upper secondary, and then I've done 1 that is an elementary level. And I'm just going to show you this one really quickly so that you can see what it looks like. Here is this is the primary one. I listed the habits of mind, I reworded them, and then I invited them to create 1 slide. And I have seen 4th and 5th graders work fluidly on their own slide decks. When you go to share this, make sure you force a copy. You can download these folders so that you can upload them into Google, and that will help you. Okay. Again, these are all ways for them to document habits of mind, because we know that habits of mind support and really develop reflective lifelong learners. Equity and excellence, right? This really is culture responsive teaching, everyone. This is about us looking at each human being and the importance of it. It helps create our environment. It says that every human counts and every human is going to be seen and heard in our classroom, and our schools will thrive and your relationships will thrive. And it does create that trusting relationship. It does support meaningful, rigorous curriculum, because then students will take risks to strive and work harder. And it's a healthy environment. It's a safe place where students will learn and challenge themselves. And this absolutely connects to employability skills. If you look at the World Economic Forum goals for 2025, these are the highest employability skills that we want all human beings to have and be able to manage. And these are all social emotional learning, all habits of mind. It doesn't say B flat major scale. It does say resilience. These are important overarching skills, not subject matter, but actual overarching skills that will help you move to our next unknown. And this is the most important part. Our future depends on preparing our students for the next unknown, for that and of what music pathways could be. Because we don't know how we could be making music in the future, but we need to give them the mental nimbleness and the nimble understanding that they themselves are growing and learning all the time, and we get to do this through music. So they have a deep and powerful connection, and they are ready to take on the world without us present in the same space. And that their lifelong learning, it gets to be through the emotive vehicle of music to become a better human and to contribute to society. So here's your call to action as this workshop ends. Begin with yourself. This is my daily goal. Identify a habit of mind that you want to manage and document your learning with examples over time. And you share that with your students. You have created a vulnerable place for them to learn through the beauty of the expression of music. I hope this workshop has helped you in some way. If you feel comfortable to share what your habit of mind might be, I invite you to place it in the chat and to share with us. I've got sources listed in the document. They're also stated here. Thank you, Peggy. That's very kind of you. I so appreciate this. Feel free to, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I am happy to take questions at any time. There it is. And if I can do anything to support you, I've supported this K through 12, and I'm happy to help you in any way. Jen, I just want to thank you and Make Music. This has been a lovely opportunity. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you and so much for sharing all this. It's such important work, and it's so with that, just a couple quick link in the description for a small survey. If you have a minute or two and want to share your thoughts on the session, it was again in that same description area or in the chat. And I think with that, that is all. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. And again, thank you once again for sharing an incredible first session of the day. And I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon and all the other sessions coming our way. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.